Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you tonight. My name is Kelly Dumar. I'm here to present the wonderful writers who are going to read their works from our recent Putting Our Grandmothers on the Page writing webinar sponsored by the International Women's Writing Guild. Thank you for coming and being our audience. Thank you for bringing your grandmothers too, and maybe many of you are grandmothers. And raise your hand if you are a grandmother. I think we do have a number of grandmothers in the room. So excellent, Karen Edwards. So as a reminder, I'm just going to let you know that I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction, and then I'm going to introduce the readers. They've all brought a piece 5 minutes or less, and for some of them, it's actually going to be quite a bit shorter than that. So after the readings, as soon as they're done, we have 7 of our 10 participants who are going to be reading their material tonight. We will have a very brief discussion. I'd like to hear just a couple of words from our readers, and then we're going to open it up. I want you to share your questions. I want you to get a chance to ask any of the writers a question about their experience with their grandmother, about their piece of writing, about what it was like to engage with grandmother writing.
I think I'd like
And if you're not muted, if you would make sure to please mute. And Leslie, if you keep an eye on that as a helper for me, except when you're reading your piece, that would be super helpful. Thank you. So as we get ready to begin, and Leslie, I'm also going to ask if you happen to notice anything in the chat that I should know about. I'm going to trust that you're going to be my helper and you're going to interrupt me and bring it to my attention. Thank you. Putting you on the spot to do this. So please be aware if you have any questions, put them in the chat room as we go along or save them up for afterwards, but make sure you put anything you appreciate about the writing that is being read in the chat room as well as we go along. All right, I'm going to share my screen. So I call this reading tonight, Stirring the Pot, Putting Our Grandmothers on the Page. Not all of our grandmothers were soup makers, but in many ways, they have fed us, and maybe we've liked their soup. Maybe we grew from their soup, and maybe their soup was not to our taste. We're going to look at the complex role of grandmother tonight, and that's what we did in the course. So in our Writing Generative workshop, we explored the theme of grandmothers. The grandmothers we're descended from, the grandmothers we are, or even the grandmothers who've influenced us through fairy tale and myth. We used prompts of personal photos, objects, and memory to excavate and expand our ideas and feelings about grandmother and explore the impact of grandmothers on our identity, relationships, our cultural background, and our family history. Some of the writers have very little experience writing. They may have been new to it. Others, you will see, have lots of experience writing. So I want to talk actually for just 1 minute about why I've started teaching this course. I've been teaching it quite a bit for the past year. And I want to mention some personal influences. I did not have a close relationship, a personal relationship with either of my grandmothers. They were very complicated grandmothers. And I kind of lived my life longing for that grandmother figure. I think a lot of us do. We have this sense of the importance of that role. And maybe even our ideas about how we want to be grandmothered. It's an archetypal idea that we have, that she's a kind of an all-nourishing figure. I had an aunt die 2 years ago, and one of the people who spoke and kind of gave a eulogy at her funeral was her grandson, Eli. Now, he was about 18 when he stood up and spoke about his grandmother for, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes. I mean, it was really in depth. And I just thought it was the most amazing thing in the world. all of the wonderful things he had to say about his grandmother. A lot of it was about play and the personal time. And I thought, this is really, really beautiful. And I hope one of my grandchildren will eulogize me in a very similar way someday. But I've always also been very, very impacted by the Carolyn Forche poem, The Morning Baking. And one of the things we did in the webinar was we warmed up to the writing by looking at different poems that have been written about grandmothers. And I think this one is a really wonderful poem to help us really understand why we might have mixed feelings about our grandmothers, and yet how influential they can be. Leslie, if you can grab the waiting room, that would be great, because I can't do it when my thing is open. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to read The Morning Baking by Carolyn Forche. Grandma, come back. I forgot how much lard for these rolls. Think you can put yourself in the ground like plain potatoes and grow in Ohio? I'm damn sick of getting fat like you. Think you can lie through your Slovak? Tell filthy stories about the blood sausage? Pish pish nights at the Virgin in Detroit? I blame your raising me up for my Slav tongue. You beat me up out back, taught me to dance. I'll tell you, I don't remember any kind of bread. Your wavy loaves of flesh stink through my sleep. The stars on your silk robes. But I'm glad I'll look when I'm old like a gypsy dusha hauling milk. So there's a lot of love and a lot of hurt in this poem. And I wanted us to be able to excavate grandmothers, not in, singularly sentimental ways, but to look at the real grandmothers that we've experienced. So that is absolutely one of the things we did. Now, why is that stuck? Oop. I think Carolyn Forche's poem demonstrates how grandmothers both illuminate and shadow our personal, family, and cultural identities. I think you're going to fall in love with some of the grandmothers you'll hear about in our readings tonight. With that said, I am going to turn this over now to our first reader, Laura Engel, who will be reading Peas in a Pod. And you need to unmute, Laura.
Sorry. Thank you, Kelly. Peas in a Pod. Grammy lived next door to me in Mississippi from the day I was born until I married and left home. She was ever present in my life. People said we were like two peas in a pod. As a tiny toddler, I would sneak out of our house and make my way to Grammy's next door, where I always knew I belonged. By the time I left home at 18, there was a well-worn path from our back door to hers. I hate to say it, but I took all this for granted. Didn't everyone have a grandmother who adored them? Who could whip up a new dress complete with covered buttons overnight? Someone who raved about them to their friends? A Grammy that applauded their every move, clapped at their stories with delight, and told them they could do anything they set their heart and mind to. Later in life, I realized the gift of my Grammy had been extraordinary. Grammy was an exceptional role model for me through my formative years. I always strived to be just like her. Whenever I envisioned myself grown up, I was always dressed in fashionable dresses, matching hats and gloves, hair tidy, short, and in a tight perm, modest jewelry, Nylons, seams straight, a sturdy girdle, of course, a no-nonsense cotton bra, and low-heeled pumps. I would be kind. I would never smoke or drink alcohol, and I would have prim and proper lady friends and go to church. I would be president of various ladies' clubs. I would be gracious, well-mannered. Like my Grammy, I would marry my hero and have a few children who would grow up and live next door to me with my adorable grandchildren. Yes, after all, we were two peas in a pod. Life had other plans. As a 17-year-old, for the first time, I disappointed my Grammy in a colossal way. I became the worst embarrassment my family could think of, a pregnant and unmarried senior in high school. After much angst and chaos, my Grammy's minister convinced my parents to secretly ship me to an unwed mother's home. After all, I was a kid. What kind of mother would I be? I was a disgrace. The humiliation of letting Grammy down planted itself like a stone in my heart next to a kernel of hate for my family that had not supported me in the darkest time of my life. And when I returned to my hometown after being forced to surrender, my firstborn son, Grammy had forgiven me, but I couldn't forgive her, my family, or myself. I no longer dreamed of being like anyone, especially my Grammy. I didn't marry my hero. I married the first damaged man who asked me for all the wrong reasons. We moved 2,000 miles away from my shame. I didn't wear my hair neat. I grew it long and wild. I wore dangling earrings. Grammy had always said gaudy jewelry was a bit much. I wore scanty clothing, halter tops with very low hip hugger jeans, gauzy see-through peasant dresses, no gloves, no Sunday go-to-meeting hat, no girdle, no slip, no bra. I gave up church. Oh, but I did make women friends, and we created our own clubs, protesting Vietnam, applauding women's rights, and not bothering to shave our legs or armpits. We smoked, we drank cheap wine, we strived not to be proper. 7 years later, time softened my rage, and I returned home to Mississippi. I wanted to show off my three small, long-haired sons. How beautiful they were, how brilliant, and that I was a good mother after all. Wearing a long peasant dress, I hiked my skirt, crossed my hairy legs, exposing them for all to see, and blatantly breastfed my 1-year-old baby boy while perched on the living room couch. In the daylight, the front curtains open. My mother called me animalistic. My father left the room. I smiled triumphantly at my Grammy. She sat next to me and smiled back. Was Grammy appalled too? I think so, but she never showed it. Her grandmother love overrode the shock of the wild pea who had returned to her pod.
Thank you so much, Laura Engel. That was Peas in a Pod. And feel free to put any comments you have, any appreciations in the chat room. Karen Weber, you are next with Putting Rose on Stage. Karen, where are you? Give me a wave so I can find you. Oh, there you are. Okay, gotcha.
Thank you, Kelly. Putting Rose on the stage. House to half. Lights up on stage. A petite, dark-haired woman in a hunter green silk dress weaves on stage through the kitchen, stopping to remove her high heels. Her feet are tired and her head aches. She takes a seat at the table, lights a cigarette, takes a few drags, and then snuffs it out. She rubs her temples and her feet, and she closes her eyes for a moment. When your son has a bar mitzvah, you celebrate hard. Ben and Rose table hopped just a few hours ago slid into cousins' laps, come all the way from Providence, sitting around half-cleared tables. My father, Mort, exceedingly tall for a 13-year-old, a raven-haired prince in his new suit, was a rock star. It was 1952, and all any Jew wanted to do was have a good time. Rose was clearly having a good time, smiling broadly in her silk V-neck dress that caught the light just so. She looked so carefree, lively, not the severe, taciturn woman I knew in high school, chiseled by cigarettes, sorrow, and constant cups of coffee. A very old photo of the Weinberg family depicts Rose, her doll face radiating an eerie white glow against her hair, black as squid's ink. On a ride from Providence to Hartford, when she was 17, there was car trouble. They stopped at a garage. It happened to be Ben's garage. Ben took one look at young Rose and saw his entire future. They courted for a year of Sundays. All of their parents objected. None of their parents were happy. But a year later, they married anyway. As a freshly minted lawyer, my sister Lauren took her first job at my father's law firm. She walked through the door of his office one day in a dark suit and pumps, hair black as pitch, face white as powder. My father looked up and gasped. He saw his mother Rose. He said it was like seeing a ghost. Rose, who cooked meat until it was shoe leather. Rose said no shoes on the table. Rose shook the salt shaker over each shoulder before sitting down at the kitchen table. Ben was never home. He was out towing cars and bellying up to the bar with pretty ladies. So here we are at the same kitchen table many years later. These days, Rose doesn't cajole, doesn't smile, doesn't dance, prefers to stay at home and smoke at the kitchen table. So here she is, sitting on stage, staring out the window, even though the shades are pulled down. On stage lights fade on a slow 5 count. Lights out.
Thank you, Karen Weber. That was Putting Rose on Stage. All right, now we have Kathy Kluge, Grandmother Star. Kathy, I'm just realizing, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing your last name right. Kathy Kluge, Grandmother Star. You can
Fine,
correct
yes.
me. It's Kluge?
Mhm.
Oh, great. Sorry about that. All righty. Give me a wave. I hear you and I can't see you. There you are. Okay. All right. So this is Kathy Kluge, Grandmother Star.
Grandmother Star, I'm a 7-year-old child sitting at your feet in rapt attention, as we are forever connected from the very first time I ever met you. Though I was too young to remember it, the meeting is etched on my heart. I never knew your life stories, but honor the not knowing because I treasure my 7-year-old stories we made together. You introduced me to your friend, the clerk at the corner grocer, as I peeked out from behind your navy blue polka dotted dress. Hand in hand, you walked me to the pharmacy where we bought chocolate snowballs with marshmallow on sweltering July days. Hand in hand, you walked me to St. Wenceslas Church, where we inserted our dimes in the thin coin slot and lit red votive candles. We walked to the 5 and dime for knickknacks to put on your shelf in the mahogany hutch. We shelled fresh peas and shucked corn and cut off green bean tips to add to the vegetable soup. We sat on the back porch before bed, watching the northbound train to Philadelphia rattle by, whistle blowing into the deep indigo night, and waved to the caboose. We counted bright and shining stars before going inside to sleep. I will always think of you, my dear grandmother, as my shining star. And so when I look to the heavens at all the stars already there, believe there is one that deserves your name, a joyous, luminous one that's just for you. Thank you.
Kathy Klug, thank you so much for Grandmother Star. Okay, and now we're going to go to Leslie Neustadt, who is going to read two pieces, Kissing in Mama Lotion and My Bones May Be Made of Tatted Lace. Welcome, Leslie. You are muted, Leslie.
I have my pieces on my computer. That's my issue. Kissing in Mama Lashen, After Kissing in Vietnamese by Ocean Vuong. Grandma Frida kissed as if she could protect me with her crimson tattoo. She kissed my hands, my fingers meant to turn pages, not stitch in sweatshops. Each Kush von Leben to ensure I'd be passed over by plagues. No pogroms, no gas chambers, no yellow stars, only drops of honey for her Shana Mädela, as if she could inoculate me from sticks and stones, no Jews allowed. Her sugar cookies, apple cake, dill-scented chicken soup were amulets too. When Grandma Frida inhaled my little girl's scent, she made me feel sunlit. She sat in her pew on Shabbos, bussed my cheek as I snuggled by. I glinted with her imprint. Grandma Frida hugged me with her full bosom, her skinny legs pulsing rivers of blue. Her kisses, a map to follow as my body fades. Now I leave ruby tattoos with my wrinkled lips on 5 grandchildren bequeathed to me. So what if my bones are made of tatted lace? Decades etched on my face, a woman one dirt shovel away from the grave. I carry history in my belly and bones. My arthritic hands can hold a pen, craft words to slip through tough skin, weave strands of shared humanness. Immigrants have become aliens, their humanity stripped away with 4 letters. Once people hurled epithets at my family, kikes, dirty Jews. You're not allowed here. Great-Grandma Leah, my namesake, fled pogroms in Ukraine, 9 children in tow. She parceled out older ones to sweatshops, used her tenement kitchen to feed factory workers. Grandma Frida taught me to be proud, shine my light, plant seeds that feed the soul. My granddaughters are half Vietnamese. Their grandmother fled the night Saigon fell. I watch my grandchildren find their way, their bones still tender, their hearts light. They ask, Noni, how can your love help us find our way through this perilous world? I want my grandchildren to hone their fine bodies and minds on life's lathe, to shine like fireflies, be heard, seen, safe, and free, to never know war, not sickened by polluted streams, singed by a world on fire. a grandmother who practiced law. I took an oath to uphold our Constitution. I cannot close my eyes as Trump orchestrates and Elon Musk wields a chainsaw, splicing democracy with dystopian glee. If I want my words and deeds to reverberate after I'm gone, I must sing Walt Whitman's song, celebrating America's multitude of melodies. I may lose inches, but remembering my grandmothers, my words grow tall. All the world's grandchildren, my North Star.
Thank you so much, Leslie Neustadt, for reading Kissing in Mama Lotion and My Bones May Be Made of Tatted Lace. Next up, we have Helene Kelly, who will be reading My Grandma by Any Name. Welcome, Helene. There you are.
My tiny, cuddly, soft, sweet, powdery smelling grandma, my mother's mother, was born in Sicily and named Maria Antoinette Granata. She was 8 years old when her family boarded a ship that brought them to Ellis Island. From there, they traveled to Buffalo, New York, settled on Busty Avenue, and opened a candy store. I was told that there was an uncle who owned a farm not far from Buffalo in Fredonia, New York, and that none of his family spoke English. My older sister Maureen was the family's first grandchild. As such, she would occasionally have the honor of traveling with my grandmother on the New York Central up to Buffalo to visit the family. One day they went to visit the uncle. My sister had no idea that Grandma was Sicilian or that she could speak Italian, and Grandma never prepared her with this information. My poor sister spent that whole day not understanding a word anyone spoke. She told me it was like being invisible. In their excitement of being together for the first time in a very long time and catching up with each other's lives, no one paid any attention to Maureen. We didn't know Grandma's background because no one ever talked about it. And if asked, she would always hold her head high and say, "I am an American." From the time of her adolescence, Grandma was a talented tailor and seamstress. As I was attempting to fit together the pieces of her life, I figured that she must have worked in a Buffalo factory. My grandfather was a tailor too. In addition, he was a union organizer. My guess was that they must have met when he was trying to organize her factory. They fell in love and eventually eloped to New York City. Otherwise, how else would a beautiful Catholic Italian girl with piercing brown eyes and flaming red hair ever meet, fall in love with, and marry a handsome, blonde, blue-eyed Hungarian Jew? Grandma was often called Mamie, a name she hated. So when she wed, she decided from then on to be known as Mabel. Therefore, with a swift signature on a marriage certificate, Maria Antoinette Granata became Mabel Rosenfeld. At some point, my grandfather changed his name from Rosenfeld to Reeves, as did his cousin, who lived in New York City too. It was still the 1940s, and their families who had remained in Hungary were all annihilated in the concentration camps. Parents, siblings, aunts, uncles, and cousins, all gone. My mother told me that the night her pa received the telegram informing him of his family's tragic fate was the only time she ever saw him cry. So I can only imagine that it was when the Rosenfelds opened their businesses, my grandparents on Madison in the 80s and the cousins on Lexington in the 40s, they may have wanted Reeves Cleaning and Tailoring and the Reeves Pharmacy to sound neutrally American instead of the more Jewish sounding Rosenfeld. I believe They were frightened. This change of surname brought Mabel Rosenfeld to her final title, Mabel Reeves. Grandma Reeves wasn't only a superb seamstress, she was an astute businesswoman and a fantastic cook. Being Sicilian, one would expect her Italian food to be out of this world, but I don't remember ever eating Italian food at her house. My grandparents lived in Yorkville, which was predominantly German and Hungarian. Grandma went to her neighbors to learn to cook Hungarian food. They taught her some Jewish recipes as well. And though Grandpa insisted he was an atheist, Grandma would find out when the high holy days were, and on those days, she served the appropriate dishes. Consequently, my mother learned to love gefilte fish. Grandma herself never went to church, but she kept 2 statues of the Virgin Mary in her home and said the rosary almost every night. Though she didn't follow the rules of Catholicism, I don't know if she even knew them. To me, it was more important that she was a kind, loving, decent human being, and that she truly was. However, when she died, she was denied burial in a Catholic cemetery because she had married outside of her faith and without the consent of the church. I, being an extremely devout 12-year-old, was both heartbroken and furious. That incident was the first of my many breaks with the teachings of my former religion, which until that time I believed in completely and with all my innocent Catholic schoolgirl heart.
Thank you so much, Helene Kelly, for reading My Grandma by Any Name. Indeed. Okay, thank you so much, Helene. So next up, we have Holly Bonacera, who'll be reading My Grandmother Auguste. Holly, I know you're here. Yeah, there you are.
My great-grandmother Auguste. My family say she was crazy. They say she was Jewish. They say she was from the city, too good to live on a farm in Wisconsin. They say her husband was not the father of her son. They say she went back to Germany, but she is not on any passenger lists. They say she was gassed in a camp. They say the Nazis sent a letter, but no one can find it. They say she was Jewish. They say she was crazy.
And that's Holly Bonacera reading My Grandmother Auguste. Okay, our final piece for the evening will be read by Greta Sechetta, Wise Words Heaven Sent. Greta, give me a wave. There you are. Okay.
Wise words heaven sent. There's an old spiritual that says everybody talking about heaven ain't going there. I sometimes wonder what heaven is like, who gets in, things like that. I recently received a timeless message through the ethers from my grandmother, Mama Broyles. I took dictation. Hello, Greta. I read your writing. I know how much you love me, how you long to remember just one day, one moment we spent together. Oh, I know you remember that I gave you a penny for every beatitude from the Bible that you memorized. You can remember that I did that, but you can't play it back in your mind, how you felt, what room we were in. You vaguely remember me once calling an ambulance from the fire department when you were sick with asthma, but you can't remember the details, just that you were in the bathroom and the men were in black uniforms. You vividly remember that there was a little gray kitten that I gave a little dish of warm milk to on the back porch, and a little yellow bird, a canary high up in a wire cage, who sang to us while I said, "Pretty bird, pretty bird." Let me tell you, Greta, Memory is a funny thing, but never you mind. It's all remembered here in heaven. And yes, the streets do seem to be paved with gold. Everything is peaceful here. God in his wisdom has seen to that. And I know you don't necessarily think of God as a he, but I still do, because that is still my way of thinking about it. Nothing really matters except to know that God is good and his mercy endures forever and ever. And yes, Jesus is here and also there, as he is everywhere, for all people, not just for a select few, as some people now think. And yes, we can all do the things he did when we believe that we can and when we believe in him. There are no bad people here, no sad people either. When you graduate to this space, you can let go of and leave behind everything else. The weather is calm and pleasant. It's just right. We spend most of our time loving and lighting. There's a brilliance within, you know, a light that shines through all of us. And yes, your mama and daddy and brother, all your aunts and uncles, lots of your cousins are here shining with me and all the other ancestors. And we are all blessed just because. You don't have to worry about getting into heaven, Greta. You already have a space reserved with your name on it. And don't worry about how you make the transition here either. You just lay your body down and slip out of the top of it, just like you told your mother that she could. Sometimes it may look very dramatic to the folks left behind, but that's only because they see through their physical eyes rather than divine. Just like so many people heard scary stories about giving birth, and for you it was just a little pressure as you talked and walked around the birthing room. This is simply another kind of birth, Greta, to ascend to a higher plane. And yes, it's quite beautiful here, breathtaking even. I can't wait to welcome you in, back home to yourself. But you don't need to rush. We will all be so glad to see you in the spirit soon enough. Give all my grands and great-grands my love, and don't worry, it lasts forever. Mama Broyles. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greta Sachetta, reading Wise Words Heaven Sent. Okay, that is the conclusion of our readings, but I know that you found it as moving as I did, and so many wonderful comments in the chat room. I'm going to ask the writers who read, or I will also include Paula and any other writers who didn't read, one or two sentences. What was your takeaway from this experience? No more than two sentences. Just unmute and let us hear from you.
Well, I'm already unmuted, but it
Great.
was challenging for me to hear because I was so moved by what everybody was saying. I thought I'll never be able to read my own. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Greta. And actually from the class, from the webinar, from the experience of writing about your grandmother, a one-sentence takeaway.
I just loved having the chance to do it. I love the class and I learned so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for your beautiful piece. Thank you. Okay, who else will we hear from? Maybe Laura.
Well, after taking this class a couple of times, well, maybe 3 times, I have just so much enjoyed it. My grandmothers both passed away many, many years ago, but while writing about them during this time, I feel closer to them than ever.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I'm wondering if everybody here, are people feeling grandmothered like tonight? Like I'm feeling so grandmothered by this experience tonight. Yeah, Leslie?
Well, Kelly, first, obviously, you gave us incredible prompts and created a space where we knew our words would be honored and our grandmothers would be honored in all their complexity. The other thing I want to say is that I treasure everyone's grandmother now who was in the class. Each one of them means something to me, and I feel that I learned from them.
Yeah, yeah, wonderfully said, Leslie. Thank you so much. Kathy.
I felt a much deeper connection, not just with my own grandmother that I wrote about, but with her ancestors that I never knew. I felt some kind of deep connection with them.
Yeah, the writing takes you there, doesn't it? Emotionally, really. Wonderful. And so many mysteries, engaging. Helene, yes.
I feel like my grandma walks with me now.
Mm.
Like she's with me all the time now. And I also feel like all the women in this class walk with me. I feel so wonderful to be amongst these women who are so deep and beautiful and willing to go places that not everybody's willing to go.
Thanks so much, Helene. Will your grandmother walk with me too? Walk with her by any of her names. What a fascinating woman. Oh my goodness. Okay, any other writers?
Yes,
And then I'll get to the questions. I'm going to get to you, June, first. Okay, Karen.
it was wonderful to be able to play in different forms with both of my grandmothers and then decide who I wanted to present tonight. That was really, thank you.
Yeah. Well, you had a lot of options, didn't you? Wonderful. Thank you, Karen. Paula. Unmute, Paula, unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just want to say that so much of history that we've learned is written about men. And it's so clear generatively why civilization has made it as far as it has. Because I think of the shoulders, what these women carried on their shoulders. And what was very powerful about the readings tonight, too, was really how much history was revealed. And that having the grace to have grandmothers and the so much love when it is possible of that in a life, that's what can change the course of history. That's how I feel about that.
Paula, thank you. I just want to let other people know that, yeah, Paula was in the class and then had some virus challenges and wasn't able to read tonight, but thank you for the commentary. Very much. Let's see, Holly, did you disappear? Did Holly disappear? Holly, are you still here by any chance? I was just going to check in with Holly. I think she's the one person we didn't get to hear from yet.
She's raising her hand.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't see her. Holly, go ahead and unmute.
I did. Hi. Am I there?
Yes.
Okay. There was such depth in this class. It was a challenge, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And the grandmother that I wrote about is one that I never met. She died before I was born. She was my great grandmother. And it wasn't the grandmother I thought I would write about, who I knew very well. So this was very surprising, and it fed into writing what you don't know, going with your intuition, making up the bits that you don't know or inferring them. And that was very good for me, because I tend to be very genealogical, as people know in my class. I stick to the facts. So I enjoyed this very much and learned so much from everybody.
Holly, thank you so much. Wonderful to hear from you all. June, you've been waiting. You maybe have a question or a comment, but please feel free to unmute. And I'm going to ask whoever wants to now maybe say something to one of the writers or talk about your own grandmother, whatever you need to do. June, go ahead. Yeah, June Grutzner. Grutzner?
Can't hear you.
Trying to have you unmute, June. Hold on.
Hello. Hello?
Yes,
We can
hello.
hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I'm on my phone and I'm not home and I'm not on my computer, so I'm a little confused. But anyway, I am not a member of this group, but I am so glad my cousin-in-law Helene invited me with the email, and it was wonderful. And I just want to sit here and cry. It was beautiful. Thank you, everybody. My grandmother raised me, so I have a special affinity towards grandmothers in general. I was never lucky to have children or to become a grandmother, but I really give so much respect to so many of the grandmothers who are raising children of their children. So that's all I wanted to say. And this is a great group of women. Wow.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you, June. Thanks for sharing that and that reminder that sometimes grandmothers really take it all on.
Yep.
Often they do.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Who else has a question or a comment?
Can I just make a comment quickly?
Sure.
My name is Kavita and I'm from Calgary, Canada. Really thoroughly loved each and every poem that was read. I was very blessed to grow up in Bombay with two very strong, loving, calm, beautiful grandmothers.
Oh, wonderful.
I'm from a Indian Jewish background, so I was quite intrigued to listen to some of the comments. I am married to a Catholic, so the Catholic Jewish connection in one of those poems was, I've got some experiences there. But in my book, Light of the Sabbath, I have poems about both my grandmothers.
Oh,
And
that's wonderful.
so I just joined this thing to celebrate my own grandmother and then all of my grandmothers, sorry, both of them, and also to celebrate the grandmothers of the different people that celebrated them in their poems so beautifully. And they were all narrative poems. So I write narrative poetry to preserve my family history. And I just want to say thank you to Kelly for organizing this. And yeah, it's just a wonderful evening for me as I'm going back in history all the way to Bombay.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Kavita, and thank you for sharing. Would someone else like to unmute and make a comment or ask a question? Is that my friend Jean
I'll make a
Crosby?
comment.
Hold on. Jean Crosby, did I just see you here? I am gonna.
Hi, Kelly.
I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you for being here. I'm so sorry I interrupted someone, but when I saw you there, I said, oh my, Jean is not my oldest friend, but we're not that old, but we have my friend I've known since I was 13 years old. Thanks for being here. Delighted
Oh, it's been great. It's been lovely. I was not close with either one of my whoops. And just to hear, the people tell the story, women tell their stories about their grandmothers. It's something I longed for that I didn't have. But it was just great. The history, and one was an Italian immigrant, one was an Irish immigrant, and they, I think everyone had struggles back then. So it was great hearing all the stories, though.
And your
Thanks.
mother was a grandmother, Rose.
Yes, my mother was Rose.
Yeah.
My grandmother was Marion. And I will change my name to Castellano one day in honor of them.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Jeannie.
Take care.
Who did I interrupt when I saw somebody was speaking? Karen, I'll get to you next. I'm so sorry. I think I interrupted somebody. If I did, please just speak up now. Somebody was talking. Okay, well, you're welcome back. Karen, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I really enjoyed this evening. I didn't know my grandmothers. They died when I was 1 and 1.5. And my mother was a wonderful grandmother to my children, and I'm a new grandmother. So I just really appreciated all of your stories and very moving. And thank you. I'm so glad I came. Thank you. Kelly is a good friend, and I really enjoyed it.
Karen. And your mother was a wonderful grandmother to her children as well. Bless her.
Ita Celine. Yes, she was. She was very.
Ida, yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Who else has a comment or a question? We'll wrap up at about 8 o'clock, but I want to make sure we hear from
Kelly,
Oh, I see
Barbara.
Barbara. Hold on.
Hasner.
Barbara has her hand up. Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you. I want to thank all the readers tonight. I was very moved and inspired. I am writing about the grandmother who died 6 years before I was born, and I determined that I feel abandoned by her. And as I delve into what I think her background is, I'm a genealogist as well, that she never knew her grandmother either. She's named for her. And so we're both yearning for a relationship we never had. So I think we write about our grandmothers, great-grandmothers, because we want to get to know them better.
Yeah.
And Mormon genealogists will tell you they want us to know them.
They want us to know them. Well, that's really beautiful. Barbara, thanks for mentioning that. You just, with the Carolyn Forche poem, the longing is just like so palpable. She knew her grandmother, but even when we don't, I think you're really right. I totally relate. We have this innate, this long-lasting, lifelong. I created an imaginary grandmother so I could get that. And wrote a poem about her. She lived in a Swedish bakery, and I could go and visit her there. We can get our longings met through our writing process.
It's wonderful.
And also through our keeping this topic alive and making it important. I love what Paula, absolutely agree 100% with what Paula said about a lot of our grandmothers have been silenced. Maybe they have been silent, or they've been silenced. They've been their voices have not been raised in the culture or in the canon a lot of the time. And so it is wonderful to talk about them. I think Jude Baruka, you have your hand raised. Please feel free to share.
I'm always pleased and delighted when my cousin invites me, Karen Weber, for her readings, and everybody, and it just always is time well spent. Everybody's readings were wonderful, and just the history that comes up, and also the healing that takes place in hearing other people's less than storied stories of challenges. So it's also very healing. It's like, oh yeah, one of my grandmothers, the one I share with Karen, that side of the family did not speak English. And so it was, I would try to teach her some English, but I never had a conversation with her, but I had her presence. So people who missed out on that, it makes me appreciate just that. And her herring, that I managed to get her recipe, and I have to find where it is in all my papers. And my other grandmother on the other side of the family, who used to just sit and just in silence and listen to me play my piano. It stays with me to this day. She's always sitting.
There's a poem in that. Whoa.
Yes. Yeah. So anyhow, I won't take
stays with you to this day. And it reminds me, Jude, is it Jude or Judy?
Jude, thank you.
Yeah, Jude. It reminds me of Kathy's piece about looking at the stars, and that it wasn't there. You got the sense that there was a presence of people together, of the grandmother and the granddaughter together, and they were just moving together, watching, experiencing each other. It was beautiful. Okay, Teresa, yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm here from New Jersey and supporting my cousin Helene. And we shared a grandmother, not the grandmother that she wrote about, but her other grandma. And I grew up in her house, and she had 11 children.
Wow.
Had about, I don't know what, Helene?
What?
The 51st cousins.
Yeah.
matriarch, and everybody had to come to her because she was the matriarch. And my grandfather, I never knew her husband, my grandfather, but I just remember like a house full of people. Everybody adored her and brought her everything that she wasn't supposed to have because she was dying. And just always, she treated us with love and care all through my upbringing. So I just wanted to add that. And I'm looking forward to Helene maybe writing something about her.
I will.
Thank you, Teresa. Beautifully said. Are there any other burning desires, something to share or ask before we close? Leslie, yes.
I just wanted you to speak what you put in the chat about the fact that you'll be teaching this again and to let people know. That's all. I wanted to make sure that you pitched it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I would love to have you contact me. I put my email address, kellydumar@gmail.com, in the chat room. If you email me, I can put you on my mailing list, or you could go to my website, kellydumar.com, and sign up for one of my mailing lists. And I'd be delighted to share the information with you. And of course, the International Women's Writing Guild is an organization I've been connected and involved with for getting close to a decade. And
It's
I'm really
wonderful.
very much appreciating the opportunity to teach this webinar to the people who come to the Guild. And I will teach it again, I'm sure, for the Guild. I'll also teach it in other places. Feel free to contact me. I would love to write about your grandmothers with you. Now, I want to go out on this. Let's take one more quick look, and then we're going to close. And again, I'm sure the Guild will let you know how you can watch the recording. I'll contact the Guild about just making sure you get the link of how that's available. And I just want to have us take one last quick look now that you've heard about them. These wonderful grandmothers that we heard about tonight. Thank you. Thank you all for
Thank you for
sharing
making
this
the
space.
Thank you. It was wonderful.
Thanks
I'm
for
very,
making
very
this
proud of all these
opportunity.
writers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
And
Kelly.
thank you,
It was
everybody,
marvelous.
for coming.
Everybody,
Bye.
Kelly.
Thank you.
Good
Bye.
night. Thank
Thanks
you.
again.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you for letting me join in. It was great.
Good night.
You know.
Night.